Sure, and thank you for having me this morning. I think in terms of Southwest, we have a neutral rating and a $55 target price. We think that it's a very well-run company, very strong balance sheet, got a very good hedge position on the oil side, but we see better risk-reward elsewhere in the space. In terms of 3Q earnings, certainly the street has seen this story before over the summer when it was some competitors that had these problems. And I think this kind of goes back more broadly to the recovery occurring in fits and starts as labor and weather can certainly wreak havoc in certain situations in this environment.
Yeah, and weather certainly has many times over been the plague for airlines and canceled flights. I realize that. But in terms of the labor piece of the puzzle, I mean, for years we've been talking about things like pilot shortages. How acute are the labor issues at Southwest specifically, or is this a bigger, broader, industry-wide situation that, for example, when Delta reports later this week, we could hear more about?
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is going to be something spread across the industry. Now, certainly part of the challenge has been trying to put in enough capacity to cover your demand. And at the same time, you have various companies out there that have had furloughed pilots. So those furloughed pilots need time to get back into the system. They need to get flight simulator training back in again before they can get back in the cockpit. So there's limited throughput on some of those pilots coming back. I think in terms of, the discussion, broader discussion on 3Q earnings and what this means for labor, certainly it's hard to get a match on the labor side at all times relative to what kind of demand you have, as well as what kind of slack you have in your system, if you get some cancellations. So if you have too many cancellations, you don't have enough slack in your system, you just kind of have to cut the bleeding and try and cancel enough flights so you get some equilibrium again. I think in terms of the labor pushback, in terms of what the carriers are demanding of their labor force, it's conceivable that you have elements of the labor force frustrated with some of the current conditions. But that being said, I wouldn't go so far to say as this is an industry-wide issue at the moment.
All right, but so frustrated with the current conditions, but you didn't say what is being speculated, which is that there are pilots who don't want to get vaccinated and who are sort of staging a sick out. I mean, do you think that's happening here or not?
Look, I think that you have individual situations where individual pilots have their reasons for calling in sick or not calling in sick or not showing up. So is it possible that you have elements of the labor force that are frustrated with certain requirements? I could not simply dismiss that. I think more broadly speaking, when you have this level of problems, it's not just one thing going wrong, it's a couple of things going wrong, and lack of slack in the capacity or just a few people calling out sick would not be a reason alone to have 25% of your flights canceled in, over a weekend, for example.